1953. The United States government is locked in a bitter Cold War with Russia, as well as being in fear of the global rise in communism. In order to get an edge on their Russian adversaries, the United States government begins developing mind-controlling drug programs. This would be the origin of Project MKUltra. Project MKUltra was the CIA's mind-controlling drug program that ran from 1953 to the 1970s. MKUltra is not only one program, but a culmination of over 182 programs. Now, there are three main topics I will be discussing that associate with Project MKUltra. One being the history leading up to Project MKUltra, two being the ethics surrounding Project MKUltra, and three being the drugs they used for experimentation and why they chose to use them. Beginning with the history, in the 1920s, Gordon Els and Heinrich Klover began experimenting with the capabilities of mescaline derivatives. Mescaline is a compound found in many cacti among the southwestern US. It is both psychedelic and psychoactive. Some drugs that are mescaline derivatives include MDA, TMA, and MDMA. Moving on to the 1940s, the Nazis would experiment with truth drugs in their concentration camps, especially in the Dachau concentration camp. They were doing these experiments in order to break the will of the imprisoned. In the 1940s as well, the United States begins developing truth drug research. When developing this research, they come up with the four major criteria of truth drug research, of truth drugs. And these four criteria are: the drug must be administered to the subject without the subject's knowing. The drug must have no negative effect or be addictive to the subject. The drug must there must be no memory of the subject taking the drug. And it must induce a talkative mood among the subject. Then, moving on to the 1940s and 1950s, Project Artichoke begins. Project Artichoke is considered the main precursor to Project MKUltra. And Project Artichoke would begin because US veterans were coming back from conflicts with communist powers, and they were speaking of pro-communist ideas, and this led the US government to believe that the communist powers had found out some way to brainwash or mind control these veterans into believing and supporting, spreading their ideas. And then this moves us up to 1953. And in 1953, two major things happened. MKUltra officially began, and Frank Olson died. Frank Olson's death begins the downward spiral of morality associated with Project MKUltra. See, Frank Olson was a CIA biochemist who committed suicide after only 9 days of being given copious amounts of LSD unknowingly by the CIA. Many believe that Frank Olson's death was not a suicide, but rather a murder conducted by the CIA. Another ethical conundrum associated with Project MKUltra is the people that they were experimenting on. The people that they were experimenting on were commonly of low socioeconomic class, as well as being marginalized groups. Some of these groups include prison inmates, sex workers, the terminally ill, and drug addicts. See, these people had no power, typically very poor, and they could not do anything to fight back against the global power of the CIA. And another major thing associated with Project MKUltra and its ethical side is how these people were giving no consent to be experimented on. See, the experiments would not work without consent because it would induce a sort of placebo effect among the participants. All the results would be not valid. And so that's why there was no consent. There couldn't be, effectively. And then moving on to the drugs they used. The drugs they used include marijuana, cocaine, LSD, and MDMA. Two of these drugs particularly interested them, and those were MDMA and LSD. See, these were psychedelic drugs, and psychedelic drugs can induce hallucinations among the users. And they thought that this would increase the truth drug or mind-controlling factor of these drugs. So that's why they used them. And another reason why they particularly used LSD was because LSD was very concentrated and it could be administered to many people at once, perhaps discussing biochemical warfare. And another major thing about Project MK Ultra is that no major scientific discovery was gained from these projects. There was no major discovery, no breakthrough, no valid results. And that's the thought that I leave you with, considering the history of these programs, the drugs they used, the people they did them on, the fact that there was no consent. Was all of this worth the little or no scientific discovery gained from these programs? Was it worth it? Was the suffering worth it? That's all. Thank you for your time.